The 1920s. The USA has just finished fighting the most catastrophic war in human history. This war helped bring on the Russian Revolution. The Spanish flu kills tens of millions of people worldwide. Women are voting. Alcohol is prohibited. Jazz is on the rise. There are these new things called movies, and organized crime is terrorizing American cities. So, what was Cincinnati's solution to all this chaos? Let's put cinnamon-flavored chili on spaghetti with shredded cheese. Cincinnati chili is as divisive as a regional food as you will find. There are those that love Cincinnati chili and those that are wrong. There are more than 250 restaurants in the greater Cincinnati area serving some variation of Cincinnati chili. 2 major chain restaurants and about 15 to 20 independent restaurants serving some variation of Cincinnati chili. Cincinnati chili is spread to neighboring major cities, several locations in Florida, as well as locations in the Middle East. Cincinnati chili as well earns $16 million every year from people buying frozen and canned products in grocery stores. But before we discuss that any further, let's answer the $250 million question. What is Cincinnati chili? Cincinnati chili is not chili. Here is the way I describe Cincinnati chili. Cincinnati chili is a thin, watery meat sauce. It is a sweet and savory sauce, not at all the same texture or taste as Texas chili, for example. Cincinnati chili is commonly served over spaghetti or hot dogs. Cincinnati chili on spaghetti is called a 3-way, 4-way, or 5-way depending on the amount of preferred ingredients, while the chili on hot dogs are called cheese conies, which get their name from Coney Island hot dogs. These dishes all each get a big mound of shredded cheese on top. Most Cincinnati chili restaurants also serve oyster crackers to you while you wait, and many people will add their leftover crackers to their meal. Cincinnati chili is not really chili. That's not chili. That's not how you eat chili. Chili doesn't normally go on pasta. Chili. Cincinnati chili isn't chili. Hey, we know. We don't care. If Detroit, Chicago, and Pittsburgh can get away with calling these dishes pizza, when I visited Colorado, I went to a restaurant that called this a cheeseburger. If these cities can get away with this, Cincinnati can call this chili. Lots of places have weird regional foods. I don't know why Cincinnati chili gets singled out as particularly bad. We call it chili because thin, watery, savory meat sauce doesn't quite have the same ring to it. So, this is chili, this is Cincinnati chili. And while Cincinnati chili has become a staple of Cincinnati's identity, the average person in Cincinnati doesn't really know exactly what's in their recipe for Cincinnati chili. You would think that given it's so popular in Cincinnati that everyone knows how to make it, but we don't. We don't even really know what's in it either, and I don't really particularly care. All Cincinnati chili parlors have their own variation of Cincinnati chili, and each parlor's taste varies slightly. There are some common denominators between all the recipes, usually ground chuck with water, tomato paste, vinegar, and a combination of spices such as these. Each chili parlor takes this base of ingredients and tweaks this recipe to their own preference. Now, there are some that have proposed that chocolate or even licorice might be in Cincinnati chili. This is a myth. The belief that there is chocolate in Cincinnati chili is false. However, no Cincinnati chili parlor will reveal their full recipe. Some may reveal the spices they use, but never the quantity of the spices. So as I mentioned, this chili started in the early 1920s across Cincinnati, but where did it come from? Greece. From 1903 to 1906, an estimated 50,000 Balkan immigrants migrated to the USA. In the 1920 census, more than 75 male immigrants from Greece and the surrounding countries were living on 5th Street in Cincinnati. The first of these Cincinnati chili families were the, Karadziejeffs? I don't really know if I'm saying this right. R.G. Karadziejeffs arrived in Cincinnati in 1918 and opened a grocery store on West 5th Street. R.G.'s 2 younger brothers, Thomas and John Karadziejeffs, followed their brother and migrated to Cincinnati in the early 1920s. The brothers, before arriving in Cincinnati, originally got some food experience working at hot dog stands in New York. But on October 24th, 1922, Tom and John opened their own hot dog joint in Cincinnati. This restaurant was called Empress Chili Parlor. The original chili parlor menu isn't too similar to the menus we're familiar with today. Tom had a history of working as an accountant at a bank, which gave him the financial savvy to run the restaurant. Excuse me. Parlor. Empress Chili Parlor was located in the corner front attached to the Empress Theater building. The Parlor's menu was designed to be a fast service food stop to quickly serve customers in between Empress Theater shows intermissions. Now, chili dogs were more common among Americans, but chili on pasta then and now is much less common. Dishes looking and tasting similar to this are fairly common in Greece. There are several Greek dishes that are credited with being the source material for Cincinnati chili, but the spices in the chili had to be adjusted for the taste palate of the German immigrants of Cincinnati. According to Joe, son of Tom Kredejev, when asked what was the inspiration for the recipe for the chili, Joe said, "I don't know." Apparently the Kredejev brothers just kept adjusting the recipe according to the feedback they were getting from customers. They originally used whatever leftover roast lamb, beef, or pork they didn't sell that day, scrapped it together, grind it, add some beans and spices, and sell it the next day. After a period of success, they eventually started buying fresh ingredients and made the chili fresh every single day. It was originally the request of a guest to add a pile of shredded cheese on top, and eventually it became a standard item. So while Empress Chili Parlor was becoming popular, at the same time the Empress Theater was becoming a bit sleazier. The chili business was doing so well that Empress Chili Parlor decided to relocate to bustling 5th Street, which was the center of the business district in Cincinnati. This new location would eventually become very popular, serving up to 1,000 people in a 90-minute lunch slot on a daily basis. Empress would continue for several more decades, and in 1965, Empress Chili Parlor opened a second location, sharing a joint dining room with Pascal's Pizza, and would stay open until 1979. Empress Chili Parlor would eventually find its way to open locations in neighborhoods on the west side and east side, as well as locations in southeastern Indiana. Empress Chili Parlor had set the template for other chili parlors, not only for the food, but also the template for the restaurant had been set. Many of these Balkan immigrants working in Empress left to open their own chili parlors around Cincinnati, and many were very successful. Maybe too successful, because out of the 250 Cincinnati chili parlors, there is only one remaining Empress Chili Parlor, and it is 25 minutes away from downtown. So what are some of these other chili parlors? The first of these chili parlors to break off from Empress was across the river in northern Kentucky. Dixie Chili, still operating out of its original location since 1929. Dixie Chili was opened by, Nicholas D. Sanis, I guess? Borrowing a lot of similar ideas from the success of Empress Chili Parlor. Beginning in the 1930s and 40s, chili parlors began to pop up all across Cincinnati and in northern Kentucky. Out of all these individual chili parlors, however, only 2 have developed into successful chains. The first of these 2 chains is Gold Star Chili, which now has just been shortened to Gold Star, which has approximately 85 locations. Gold Star Chili was opened by the Dowd brothers. The brothers migrated from Jordan, and they opened Hamburger Heaven in Mount Washington in 1963. This restaurant served burgers, as well as their own variation of chili. They realized that customers were ordering the chili more than the burgers, so the name was changed from Hamburger Heaven to Gold Star Chili in 1965. However, the biggest chili chain in Cincinnati is Skyline Chili. The founder of Skyline Chili is a man named Nicholas Lambrinidis. Like many of the chili pioneers, he was born in Greece. He came to the USA in 1812. He found work working as a railroad cook, which took him all over the United States. His cooking practices were much more sanitary than practices at the time, and he actually earned bragging rights for his food, not getting anyone sick or killing anyone. Eventually, the railroad took him to Cincinnati, where he encountered the fledgling Greek chili restaurants. Nick and his wife Alexandra set up in a second-floor flat on Plum Street for them and their family of 5 sons. Nicholas opened his diner at the corner of 9th and Elm. That diner would close shortly after, and Nick continued to gain experience working as a cook in Metropole Hotel. By 1945, the family had moved to Beach Street in Price Hill, and after several years of working for Empress Chili Parlor and creating his own tweaked version of Empress Chili recipe, Nicholas Lambrinidis would open his own chili parlor on Glenway Avenue in Price Hill. Skyline Chili opened on October 10, 1949. The name Skyline is rumored to have been inspired from the view of downtown the restaurant offered, but according to Bill Lambrinidis, that is not likely the case. Apparently, you could view the downtown skyline through an upstairs window, but it was only accessible to employees. The idea of the skyline view might have been exaggerated to help lure customers into the restaurant. The Lambrinidis had their first customer, Alex, Chaldekis, I think. Okay, listen, I don't know why all these names are so difficult to pronounce. I'm doing my best, alright? But his bill for that first Skyline meal was 20 cents. He paid with a $1 bill and told them to keep the change. Skyline Chili was originally not an overnight success. After a slow start, Nicholas began offering free samples to the Catholic Germans living in East Price Hill, and after that, business began to pick up. Another business move was opening another Skyline in 1951 on 5th and Main, just a few blocks away from Empress Chili Parlor. A family friend of the Lambrinitas, Nicholas Poyos, bought that location in 1958. Over the following years, Skylines would be opened in several other Cincinnati neighborhoods. The Clifton location, being probably the most iconic Skyline restaurant, is the only Skyline location really capturing that original chili parlor feel. Two brothers from Greece, John and Pete Georgetown, opened this location. They worked at the original Skyline and took what they learned to open this iconic Skyline location in 1966. This location is nestled between several colleges and hospitals, and this location became the busiest location in the company. And by 1965, Skyline also began distributing their products in grocery stores. Now, as I mentioned, there are lots of individual chili parlors across Cincinnati in individual neighborhoods. Originally, it seemed like the craving for Cincinnati chili could be satisfied with one chili parlor per neighborhood, but as the cravings grew, the market demanded more, and Skyline quickly took advantage. Skyline chilies quickly spread to neighborhoods where solo chili parlors had already spent years introducing the chili taste. Skyline Chili became successful because many of these young entrepreneurs hoping to open their own chili parlor felt confident latching their name onto an already established successful brand. The owner of Price Hill Chili, Sam Beltzotes, actually said the Lambrinitas family members visited him to help give him advice for the opening of his Price Hill Chili restaurant. In 1984, the Lambrinitas sold 4% of Skyline stock to Thomas Bell, who became chief executive. When Bell took over, there were fewer than 30 Skyline locations, and his plan was to achieve 200 Skyline locations, eventually hoping to achieve nationwide success, with his goal being 2,000 Skyline locations. The plan took off, and by 1986, Skyline had opened nearly 50 locations across the United States. The locations opened outside of Cincinnati were met with mostly unsuccessful results. However, locations opened in Florida were and still remain successful, and for some reason that just seems to make sense. By that same year, nearly 20% of Skyline's revenue came from grocery store sales, and by 1988, Skyline had 78 stores, and Bell's hope was for an additional 15 to 20 new stores per year. But success continued to prove unsuccessful outside of Cincinnati. Bell resigned, and William Kagler was tasked with filling his role. Kagler admitted that the reason for Skyline's unsuccessful attempts to open outside of Cincinnati was due to Skyline overextending, so they began closing down some of the less successful locations. His goal was to still build up brand recognition in Cincinnati before trying to branch out across the United States. The number of locations remained the same through the 90s, and in October of 1994, the Lambrinitas brothers retired. In 2002, the original Skyline location at Glenway was facing serious structural, electric, and plumbing problems. So after consideration, that original location was torn down and a new Skyline was built down the street at Warsaw Avenue. This location was a much needed update,
but for many locals, it was still very difficult to know that they were going to have to say goodbye to the original Skyline location.
That original location's final day of service was on April 23, 2002. On that day, tickets were passed out to the customers for one final meal. This iconic original Skyline location was torn down and was replaced with an empty parking lot. By 2001, there were 110 Skylines. By 2011, 136. In 2021, there were 160. Again, mostly in Ohio, Northern Kentucky, and Southeast Indiana, but successful locations had extended to neighboring major cities, as well as, again, a constant presence in Florida, which, again, just seems to make sense. In 2012, Skyline downtown on Vine Street was visited by President Obama, making him the only president to ever dine in a Skyline. Advertisements as well as catering options helped increase business. Skyline created an iconic advertising local jingle based off the 1958 song Twilight Time. Skyline as well is a sponsor of most major sports teams in Cincinnati, including recently, the Bengals. Even though, you know,